Welcome to our next installment of Trash, OP, and Mad, the series where we go through a bunch of units, lords, characters, heroes, everything that is either perpetually terrible, perpetually overpowered, or just kind of meh, and could use an adjustment for us to see it more often. Start off with trash, we have the Slaughter Brutes. We have a lot of situations to go through. I'll try and rip through them pretty quickly, but currently we have our Slaughter Brute getting shot by artillery. In 2 volleys from 2 artillery, he's already missing a quarter of his health, so he's not particularly tanky to artillery. And, you know, maybe he shouldn't be. I'm not saying that's the entire point of this video. Just bear with me for a second. So artillery is currently beating him up pretty good. Then we have 2 pistol gunnery mobs, 300 gold, non-armor piercing little pistol guys, shooting at this other Slaughter Brute, getting decent damage onto him. That Slaughter Brute's now at half HP in less than a minute. This one is at just above half HP, again at a minute, but they haven't been firing for a full minute. They've been walking over here for a lot of it. Pistol mob's gonna shoot for a little bit. We'll just go do 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 as I move up my handgun mobs. Do 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 do. All right, so 1,400 gold worth of cannons. Oh, sorry, 2 volleys from these handgunners took this one down to this. I didn't think they got in range that quickly, otherwise I would have slowed down. That's my bad. So in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 1,400 gold worth of artillery can kill a whole Slaughter Brute, which is 2,000 gold of Slaughter Brute. In roughly 2 minutes of consistent fire, small arms fire, 2 pistol mobs can take down a Slaughter Brute. And in 2 volleys from 2 handgunners, so 4 volleys total, these armor-piercing guys can almost kill a Slaughter Brute. I think 1 more volley will do it from them. There they go. So in less than 30 seconds, 2 handgun mobs can take out a Slaughter Brute. And then this one's taking forever to die because my pistol mobs got locked on each other and couldn't, like, move. So all ranged fire, armor piercing or not, is great versus Slaughter Brutes. Okay, fair. It's 2,000 gold. It's 70 armor with some middling missile resistance. Okay, fair. But it's a giant monster of corn. Surely it's meant for dueling or fighting infantry in melee or something like that. So let's get on with it. We'll have Luther Harkon, Duel 1. Now Luther Harkon is 300 gold more expensive. Fair, but I didn't bring any of his dueling abilities. It is just the man himself on a Terrorgeist fighting against the Slaughter Brute. Okay, he's 300 gold more expensive, but he is paying for flying, higher speed, regeneration, all those things, and his breath attacks, which I didn't even use his breath attacks. So let's see how it does in a duel 1v1. As I set up some other stuff. Luther's doing pretty good. Now he does have regeneration. He does not have the hunger, he just has regeneration. So maybe that's a little disingenuous. Let's check. 1,500 value for the Slaughter Brute, 1,900 value for Luther. So in a duelist versus duelist thing, I'm not going to pretend Luther isn't a duelist, but in duelist versus duelist, it loses to Luther getting worse value than he does. Okay, so it's an okay duelist, but not like one of the best considering how weak it is to those, and it doesn't have flying, and it doesn't have breath attacks, and it doesn't have self-regeneration. And Luther, before you get on my case, Luther is hardly considered a meta or strong character. So the fact that he just bodied one without using half of his abilities, I mean, come on. So now, cheap halberds fight a Slaughter Brute, which, yep, they're halberds, for sure. They're not like Empire swordsmen, but if you're taking a 2,000 gold monster that's weak to shooting to kill some Empire swordsmen, it's still bad. So that's on you. But let's see how it does versus cheap halberds. It is clearing through them, but it's taking quite a while to do so, and it could be getting shot this whole time. It's taking about as long to kill them as it took the pistols to kill the Slaughter Brute. And of course the halberds are going to be paying for themselves. They've got some decent value out here. But okay, it did pretty well against light infantry, all things considered. That's the first win it's gotten. It churned through 2 groups of halberds. Its friend came in and helped, but overall, like, it did kill the halberds mostly on its own, so that's fine. Now that we've isolated one out, we're going to send Depth Guard over so this one doesn't get the help of its right now. These are Depth Guard. Armored infantry with non-armor piercing, non-anti-large damage. And they tear it to shreds. because with 70 armor and 46 melee defense, it's not actually that strong. I do line up some handgunners to kill off some of the slaughter brutes to set up my next thing I wanted to show. But this one gets torn limb from limb. Gets about 1,500 value back. Again, fighting these heavy infantry, but it doesn't beat them. The heavy infantry both get a lot of value fighting back against the slaughter brute. And while it almost pays for itself, this is it almost paying for itself while fighting heavy infantry that are not designed to counter it, and it's not under ranged fire, which usually slaughter brutes are. Okay, so it is all right, decent, maybe even good versus light infantry. It is terribly weak to ranged fire of all kinds. It is not a great duelist, it's an okay duelist. And it's terrible at clearing out heavy infantry because apparently heavy infantry just beat the shit out of it. What about monstrous infantry? Non-anti-large, monstrous infantry. Can the slaughter brute stand up to them? As I try and bait it away from the Scarbrands. I don't want to fight the Scarbrands. Well, as the Mourngulls tear it apart, I can also tell you it's not very good versus monstrous infantry because it gets staggered a lot. You can see it keeps getting pushed back. It will get an attack off here and there, but it staggers quite often. As I'm going to get Luther to try and distract the Scarbrand, but unfortunately it actually pushes him back into the Mourngulls. But the Slaughterbird's not doing great versus the Mourngulls. He's lost half his HP and he's gotten 600 value versus monstrous non-anti-large units. Okay, so that's enough for the demonstration. We're just... in the background, you'll see the Mourngulls continue to grind through this slaughter brute as the rest of the video goes on, but I've shown that it's pretty freaking bad versus most things. It's 2,000 gold, moderate armor with 70 base is not that great with a tall model. It is unbreakable as long as its Lord's alive. It's decently fast with 66 speed. It has decently high melee attack, honestly decently high melee defense considering monsters. High weapon strength, decent charge bonus. Ugh. Just, ugh. I don't know. The slaughter brute sucks. So how to fix it? Can't just say make it cheaper. The easiest answer, but the least interesting, would be make this thing like 1,600 gold, and then it'd be fine, maybe even strong. But let's actually look at its stats and try and fix it somehow. The idea is that as long as your Lord is alive, this thing's gonna be this great bodyguard that just murders things, huh? There's two options. Either give it the Blood Knight Flag of Red Keep ability, maybe jack it up a bit, but as long as it's out of melee combat, it has like, let's give it maybe 50% missile resistance instead of 25, right? As long as it's out of melee combat. And then once it's in melee combat, it goes down to the 25. That could make it a little tankier to skirmish cav and skirmish fire and artillery before it gets in the melee. And then once it gets in the melee, then you can shoot it or whatever. That could be helpful. Also thinking we could give it, you know, the Lava Ragnarok Spider has the eruption it does occasionally. That could be pretty cool since this guy is kind of weird and like molten looking. Like he has that sword in his back. You could have some weird like fireballs of corn pop out every so often. It doesn't have to do the Lava Ragnarok's level of damage. I was just talking about like the animation, but occasional little bursts of damage that come out of it while it's in melee, and it's on a cooldown that only recharges when it's in melee, could be things that make it better at clearing out infantry and cavalry, but not improve its stats as like a duelist if you don't want it to be a pure solid duelist. That could be good. So I would do those two in conjunction. The missile resistance and then the occasional little burst, kind of like the not brood horrors, why am I being dumb? Jabber Scythes for the beastmen occasionally have little vortexes that come out of them. One does poison, one does like magic damage if it's the ROR. So that could make it better at clearing out cavalry and infantry and make it a little tankier to ranged fire. Honestly, I could propose another option and like think really hard, but honestly that just sounds good. So that would make this guy more of a crowd clearing monstrosity. I guess if you really wanted him to be a bodyguard for the Lord, because he has like unbreakable as long as your Lord is alive and stuff, you could do neither of those, but then give him Guardian, so give physical resistance when he's near your Lord, and he could also have the buff that the Eternal Entourage have for Slanesh, where it's like when they're near their Lord, they give their Lord a bunch of stats. But I would have it go both ways. So when he's next to his Lord, he gives Guardian, and then like he and the Lord both get, I don't know, plus 10 melee attack, plus 25% armor piercing and base weapon damage, or something like that, you know, if you want him to be this loyal guard dog that's like following your Lord around, right? So I think those are two different options to make the Slaughter Brute better without just making him cheaper. I think with his current iteration, you could make him just 1600 gold and he would be solid. I don't even think he'd be OP. I think he'd just be solid. Is it that time again? Oh, it's that time again. Human Boy complains about Flying Skirmish, Changebringer edition. Changebringers are perpetually OP. They've been really, really strong since they were released. I think they're disgusting. They're garbage units that are a dumpster fire for game balance and game design. I hate them. They are very squishy. They are very expensive. They're a light switch unit. I've complained about that before. Basically, if you have the stuff to counter them, you instantly win the game, and if you don't, you lose the game, and they're very dumb. So here, we see them charge into these jav throwers, and they're very versatile, so they can dodge easily. So one of them dodged a lot of a volley. The other one just face tanked the volley, and their Zinch barriers ate the damage. So they can get in range of their supposed counters, ranged units. They can get in range of them with either taking almost no damage or almost no damage. And then when they counterfire, they do way more damage. And now I don't even dodge. Now I just sit here. We just blast them. And then, without having done anything too fancy, we just routed off both these guys. And now with my incredible speed, because I'm a flying fast unit, I can just run down these skirmish caps. They can't even rally. Run down these little archer guys. And just like that, we have secured the aerial advantage using our aerial units to kill the ground-based ranged units, because that's a wise thing to be able to do. Have the only unit that can possibly counter the flying skirmish easily killed by the flying skirmish, because Changebringers have so much burst that it's pretty easy to kill off the range. Now again, if your opponent has like 8 or 9 ranged units to purely counter your Changebringers, then sure, you'll lose, but that doesn't make it a good or fun game to cast or watch or anything like that. I think Changebringers are fundamentally broken. As we line up here, they're pretty good versus everything. We have armored skin wolves, spread out monstrous units, and then we have marauder champions, heavily armored infantry, and we have basic marauders, non-armored light infantry. And in one frickin' volley, half HP off the marauder champions, more than half HP off the skin wolves, and a 1/3 HP off the marauders, which is a little interesting. Kind of curious why that did so little damage. And then these Changebringers are just going to light up Wolford for a while. So in one volley, being able to take half HP off anything that's not a single entity, and in 2 or 3 volleys, taking 4,000 HP off a single entity like a mammoth. Here, let's see if it was 3 volleys. Looks like it was 3 volleys to do that. So 4 volleys taking the HP off the mammoth. They've already paid for themselves shooting at this mammoth in like 5 volleys. So that's not great. Don't love that. Changebringers are bullshit and toxic and OP. How to change them and make them not bullshit, toxic, and OP? Well, they're already crazy squishy, so I can't really take away any of their defensive stats. They don't do very much damage in melee at all, except for when they're chasing down something routing. So I think they're like melee performance is already acceptable. Their cost is pretty acceptable. I think the big thing is their damage. How to make these guys not overpowered is to keep their total damage profile the same. And I have a complaint at the end, but I'll get to that at the end. So in 10 volleys, let's say they have, I didn't check when they still had all their ammo, but like, let's say they have 10 volleys and they do 10 damage. Like, this game works in thousands, but bear with me for the math. 10 volleys, 10 damage. Their total damage output in the whole game is 100, right? 10 volleys, 10 damage, 100. I would switch that to give them 30 ammunition at 3.33 damage, right? So then it's still, if you get off all 30 volleys, you do 100 damage, right? And we know that these guys don't do 100 damage. I'm just simplifying the math to make a point. They do fuckloads of damage. So if you get all their ammo off, they're still going to murder a ton of stuff. My point is more, it takes them 3 times as long. So instead of 1 burst insta-killing the Marauder Hunter Javelins that were supposed to be countering them, or 2 bursts pushing away the Marauder Horsemaster that was supposed to counter them, it would take 6. You'd have to sit in front of a ranged unit for 6 volleys, and then you'll take significant damage, right? And that sets it up so that the Changebringers can't just shotgun burst whatever's supposed to counter them, secure aerial advantage, and then just shotgun burst down everything on the ground and win the game through Sky Cheese. It's still, like, this is where the complaint at the end comes in. No one is saying watching Changebringers use 30 ammunition to kill your whole army is going to be fun. I still argue watching them use 10 ammunition to kill your whole army isn't fun, but Sky Cheese isn't fun, period. But this makes it much more interactive if it takes them 3 times as long to get out their damage. And I'm not trying to just reduce their damage potential, because if I just cut their damage in a third but left their ammunition as it is, this unit just sucks. And we're not trying to do that. As much as I hate this unit, and I think it deserves to suck because it's bad for the game, the point of the series isn't make units that are terribly designed shitty. It's balance them. So Changebringers should be able to kill off most of your army if you have literally no way of countering them and they get all of their ammo off, sure. But I don't think it should be a shotgun burst, because then they can just fly up to archers, beat your archers at ranged fire, which is not smart, and then secure the aerial advantage on their own. They should need helpers. They should need Furies or Screamers or ground forces to overrun the archers and buy them time to shoot. They shouldn't be able to do it themselves, and I think reducing that damage output, they wouldn't be able to rout off archers or anything as quickly, and they would take more damage while doing it, which they're fragile enough that they can't afford to trade health with archers. But currently, I mean, they can dodge 1 volley, tank another one on their shields, and by then they've routed the archer or whatever they're fighting, so it's pretty worthless. That's how I do it. And for our meh means this character isn't actually bad. He's also not that great. You just don't see him. Bellacor. Oh, Bellacor. So again, this character's not bad. So we're not going for just raw buffs. We're just trying to find a way to make them more viable. Bellacor has a bit of the Kugath Plaguefather problem we discussed, except he's not a light switch unit like Kugath is, and we discussed light switch in this video with Changebringers, so you should understand that concept. There is nothing that directly counters Bellacor and instantly wins you the game. There's nothing that Bellacor counters either and instantly loses you the game if you're fighting him. But Bellacor is 4,400 gold. And like, let's bring him down to a reasonable kit. Some people would take Melkoths and Pit of Shades, cut Smoke and Mirrors because it's bad, cut Blade of Shadows because it's bad. Lord of Torment's good. Whispers in the Dark is good depending on who you're fighting. Dark Master is fine. Shadow Shroud's fine. So like 3,600 gold. You can cut one other ability, make him 3,400. Whatever. Nuance aside, this guy's still 3,600 gold. And with your standard funds, that's like a third of your army. Yeah, that's a bit over a quarter, not quite a third of your army. So that's a lot. You're significantly reducing whatever force you can bring, and you're just hoping for Bellacor to solo carry, and that's really difficult. With only 45 armor and 9,000 HP, he can get poked down by basic archers and stuff. Now he has some physical resistance for being a demon. He has missile resistance, and then he also has Shadow Shroud, which gives him 60% damage resistance. So he can be really tanky and frustrating. But I don't think he's like well designed. I think he's really annoying for both sides to deal with, because he does have a slow heal when stuff near him is routing. He does have multiple ways of defending himself, like to make himself tankier. But his main gameplay pattern is just to rout people off and then chase them while charging up kills for his Blade of Shadow if he took it, and getting his healing back while recharging his cooldown for Shadow Shroud so he can come back and charge you again with Shadow Shroud up, route something else, chase it off the map, and yada yada. It's not a fun gameplay loop for either player. It just leads to slow, drawn-out games when Bellacor is involved. It's not great. In campaign, he's fine because he's kind of supposed to be this one-man army that you're power tripping on. But before the campaign crowd yells at me, there's plenty of ways of making him do what you want to do in campaign with just Lord skills in the skill tree, right? Like, you can just put these things, anything I remove from him or change, you could just put the old way it was in the skill tree and make him like he is. And then in multiplayer, you can price him differently based on the changes I'm going to say. So it's like, in campaign, he doesn't cost you 4,000 gold, right? But in multiplayer, he does because of all the skills you can get. So anyway, so my rough thing to get Bellacor to be not meh anymore and be meta is actually take away some of his abilities, but then make him cheaper. And then he's just not such a problem to take. What's his base cost? Like, nothing on him. His base cost is, oh my god, 2,600. 2,600 for a flying lord, less than 10,000 HP, 45 armor, decent melee stats. Ugh. He is way overcosted without his abilities. But then, like, Shadow Shroud is worth way more than 200 gold. Like, people would take this if it was 400 gold. So he is priced very high because of his abilities. Okay. So how to make him cheaper? Obviously, you should keep Shadow's magic because that's his whole, like, shtick, is he's the Shadow guy. So Shadow's magic is fine. Smoke and Mirrors is fine because it's the Shadow's passive. Blade of Shadow is honestly fine. The more kills he gets, the more damage he gets up to a cap. That's pretty solid. That's fine. I would take Lord of Torment and put it in campaign exclusively. So I would just remove this slow healing power recharge thing altogether, period. Just get rid of it. For multiplayers. Now you don't have to worry about him having healing unless you take a Nurgle caster, which is a totally different thing, and sure, you do that if you want to. Then let's jack up Whispers in the Dark. -6 melee, -6 leadership is okay. Removes immune to psychology is pretty niche, and this is for a 200 gold ability. I don't think that's super worth 200 gold, so we might combine some of the Lord of Torment stuff in this. So let's do leadership from 0 to -10, and it removes immune to psychology, and it should scale based on the number of units nearby, not wavering units, just units, period. So if he jumps into a giant pile of guys, there's a larger leadership debuff, kind of like Zatan's melee attack debuff. But Zatan's sucks, and we'll talk about him in a different video. But this should scale not at all like Zatan's. Like, it should scale if there's by each enemy unit in range. I don't know if it means model or unit type. If it's like unit type, it should be 25% increments for every unit next to him. So it's like if he's next to 4 different units, 4 unit flags, he's at 100%, -10 leadership around him. And if he's at 2, he's at 50%, so -5 leadership around him. If it's about models, I would have it scale up to 400. So every 100 is 25%. Because then it's like, if he jumps on a full health, no models missing peasant mob, he's already at almost 50% because they have 160 models. Right? But then as the game goes on, then it's harder and harder to get those models. So if it's based on models, I do like 400 models. If it's based on unit flags, I do 4 units. So Lord of Torment is going to be overall, Whispers in the Dark is going to be overall stronger, I think, in the end. But maybe you could argue it's going to be weaker because Whispers in the Dark currently is -6 for 1 unit, and I'm saying it scales up. He would be much better at jumping into a big fight and causing disruption than he would be at dueling with that. So, okay, maybe we've given him 2 nerfs. We took away ability, and we took away Whispers in the Dark. That's fair. We are nerfing him because I want to bring his base cost way down. Do you remember that? Dark Master is fine. Shadow Shroud is probably too good. And again, in campaign, you could have this skill be like, maybe he has Shadow Shroud at level 1. It's 20% damage resistance. And then you give him a skill tree that goes from like 20 to 40 to 60, fuck it, to 80, right? Like, and you get it up in increments as you level up or whatever. Like, do something with that. But base 60% in multiplayer for 200 gold is way too cost effective. So I would give Shadow Shroud 30% damage resistance for 200 gold. So that ability takes a nerf. So then let's take him with this new kit. Lord of Torment doesn't exist. We put that in campaign. Whispers in the Dark got changed. Dark Master was left alone, and Shadow Shroud was significantly nerfed. Okay, then we'll take Melkos and Pit of Shades. So with this kit, with my proposed changes, he should be like 2,700 gold. Yeah. Maybe 2,800. So you could give him like a base 600 cost decrease if you did all those nerfs to his abilities. Because currently his base model is paying for his cranked abilities. So like this character is by no means worth 2,600. And by the time you get him up, because you have to put on a certain amount of abilities to make him worth it, right? Like, sorry, I know I'm rambling, so I'm going to try and focus this final thought. To make Bellacor worth it, base Bellacor is not worth it at all, but each of his abilities is way more cost effective than it is paid for. So the more abilities you put on him, the closer you get to getting a good character per unit of gold spent. But by the time you put enough stuff on him to get a good character, you're at untenable levels of cost for a realistic multiplayer game. And then even if he is strong enough at this cost to win the game, the play pattern is going to be so horribly unfun for both players that they just avoid him anyway, which is kind of his current state of play. You usually just see Archaon, because Archaon's great, but also Bellacor's boring as shit after like 2 games. So that would be my proposal, is nerf those abilities, but then drag his cost way down. So you don't have to keep adding abilities to make him viable. It's just like make him viable without any of his abilities, and then his abilities more reasonably cost effective. So you can make him expensive if you want to, but you don't have to make him worth it. That's how I change Bellacor. All right, goodbye.
Subscribe, yes, yes.